Hi, welcome to week 5 of Introduction to Nonprofit and Ministry Management. This is Andrew Sears, and this week we're going to focus on the Compete Quadrant, which is business and funding or fundraising skills. So, in mapping organizations across these quadrants, and if you are in a fundraising division or in sales and marketing, most likely if you did an inventory on your division, it's going to look something like this. So you're going to be very strong on the compete, also usually fairly strong on the collaborate, because, for example, if you're fundraising, you need to be both relational, but you got to meet your goals, right? And it's kind of the same thing. And then, the create and control, you can't be too small on those. You need to have good systems. You need to have some ideas, but you're not, completely focused on coming up with new ideas. So the focus of this week, the courses that we cover would be marketing, grant writing, nonprofit fundraising, and I put nonprofit managerial accounting partly because that is not as much about control as it is about making good business decisions based on your finances. So now, what are the performance outcomes in this quadrant? Ultimately, total revenue. The amount of cash on hand or your cash flow. In nonprofits, it wouldn't be profitability, but it might be, at year end, you're not supposed to so-called, be a for-profit organization, but that would be your net income, essentially, which is the nonprofit equivalent of profit. Nonprofits don't have stock price or shareholder value. But there is kind of a ranking in the industry. So often people in this quadrant are, one of the analogies to use the athlete. It's people who are very competitive, and could be both relational and competitive. Now, where do you get organizational improvement in this quadrant? Ultimately, you might look at how competitors are doing. So if you're in a nonprofit, you might look at, okay, what are the bigger nonprofits? How have they done? And you're going to do a lot on analyzing business cases for change, and a lot of organizations, especially in the for-profit, this might be focused on sales commission and things along those lines. Nonprofits don't typically do that. And ultimately, people in this quadrant generally are, you're trying to create a culture that is going to persist, that, people are going to work very hard, to improve the organization. So, how do you communicate and lead for growth? So SMART goals, is this quadrant. So, specific, measurable, aligned, reachable, and time bound, and you will have measures and accountability for success. So if you're in fundraising, you got to hit your fundraising target for that year. If you're, say a major donor, managing major donors or things along those lines. And ultimately, you have to connect to outcomes, and talking to customers. Often people in this quadrant, the customer is the donors. So talking with them, trying to figure out how can you serve them effectively, and how do you connect them with the outcomes of the organization and help them understand that. So this again is one of the most significant tensions that I see in ministries. And let me just talk about the tension that happens. Often the tension it's that you're in a ministry that is dominant with, in one culture or the other. And often large ministries that are very good at fundraising will be much stronger in this quadrant. They're very good at fundraising, but often they'll be culturally distant from their clients. They might be, more affluent. They might be, very white or Western dominated. And then there's other organizations that really emphasize, like if you're familiar with the Christian Community Development Association, they put a strong value on being close to your clients. And I've worked with a lot of Christian community development organizations that are small, and their challenge is that they are too far in this direction, and they aren't able to attract the funders. So ultimately, you need to have balance, because if you have an organization that is brilliant at fundraising, but you're serving clients, you're radically different in culture to your clients, you're not going to have good outcomes with your clients. And vice versa is if you're really close to your clients, but you're not able to attract funding, then your organization is going to be dysfunctional, because you're not going to be able to pay your staff. You're not going to be able to get qualified staff. And then you're going to run into problems with that. So if you are in an unbalanced business or organization that's very focused on the compete quadrant, you might have a profile that looks like this. If you did you assess your organization. So what does that look like? Ultimately, it would be, being too driven. The term driven is probably the biggest. If your organization feels too driven, too focused on goals, organization made of workaholics, having a lot of conflict, having too much ambition, and ultimately, how that devolves and is into an oppressive sweatshop. So, how do you create that balance? Again, just to revisit, what you're looking for here is you're looking for effective management has high concern for results and high concern for people. So that would be, strong compete and strong cooperate. And ultimately, we're looking to balance a leader with the collaborative nature and, focus on speed and results. And I don't know if you've ever been in organizations where they'll discuss things for years and years or weeks and weeks, but they never make a decision. And then there's other organizations where they make decisions, but there's not as much collaboration. So, so that's kind of the summary for this week. Ultimately, what we're looking for is leaders that have this, caring confrontation, that they will, the phrase, the truth can only be as great as your love. The compete quadrant might focus a lot on the truth. The collaboration quadrant would focus on the love. So hopefully this is helpful. And if you have any questions, just ask your faculty member this week. Thanks.